Okay, with the release of Resident Evil uh, Afterlife coming right up around the corner, I decided to do a review of the entire movie series one at a time because I like this series. And I know there's a lot of Resident Evil fans who disagree with that, who don't like it, and I understand completely why they don't like it. It has really very little to do with the actual games. They changed it from a horror genre to an action movie genre. And I think I've explained this before, I treat the movie universe kind of like Marvel and Ultimate Marvel Universe, where they're kind of the same, but they're also vastly different. So I just take the Resident Evil movies as being completely different. And we do have a real Resident Evil movie, which I will get to, which is Resident Evil Degeneration. So fans of the games, we do have something to go for. But let's start off with the first movie by Paul W.S. Anderson, Resident Evil, starring Milla Jovovich. And even though she really isn't the second main character, on the front of the box, Michelle Rodriguez. Back before she was really popular and did all this stuff. It came out in 2002, the good old years. I remember seeing this in theaters. I was one of the few people. It actually didn't do that well. It did moderate okay. It got about $30 million in the box office, which is pretty small, but that was about its budget. And it got another, I think, about $70 million worldwide. So it came to about $100 million. It was fairly popular, much more popular overseas. But the other thing that made this movie successful was that it did do very decent for a $30 million grossing movie. It did very well on DVD sales, which is really what helped it get the green light for a sequel. But let's dive into this Resident Evil, which also kind of ties into. Well, let's talk about the development. First Resident Evil film was talked about shortly after the first game came out, and it was supposed to be directed by George Romero. A lot of people were really excited that because the game was basically a tribute to Romero's zombie movies. Now, in retrospective, I'm kind of happy because I am not as happy with Romero's later work. Dawn of the Dead was okay. Not Dawn of the Dead. Land of the Dead was okay, but after that though, it took a big dive. So I'm actually kind of glad that Romero didn't do the Resident Evil franchise. But I think this is the first thing we have to address with it being non-canon. As we all know, it's about a group of commandos going down to turn off a supercomputer that went crazy. This movie actually came out before Resident Evil Zero. It came out several months before Resident Evil Zero, and it was originally intended to explain what happened before the first game. That that it was a computer deep in the underground lab that transformed everything, or that went crazy after this whole sabotage subplot in there. It was all meant to explain what happened before, and that is really the point of departure. And to its credit, it came out before Resident Evil Zero established firmly in the movie, or not in the movie, in the game universe, what happened. Granted, it was only a few months apart. The movie came out in March of 2002, and Resident Evil Zero came out in November of 2002. Well, that's a pretty good distance, but still. Obviously, both were in development. I'm not sure how long each were in development and which ideal came out first. But still, for those that aren't as happy with the first one because of the departure, it was trying to establish what happened beforehand. That was the original intention, and which is why it doesn't have any characters from the first game, from the games in it, because it really was trying to tie into the game universe in a way that wasn't going to contradict anything, really. Obviously, there's some big differences in what the stuff looked like and all that. The mansions look completely different, but that's actually how I kind of want a lot of game movies to be, that they can be part of, that they kind of bring in a completely different set of characters set in that universe. But either happened before or happened on a side mission somewhere, which to the credit of the producers of this and writers, not a bad start. A lot of people though do agree that they like this movie in particular out of the entire franchise. I know there's some that I'm kind of defending this more than I think I need to, because even a lot of the critics of the movie series do grant it that the first one was fairly good. It had much more horror elements than any of the later films There was a lot more little spook moments. Literally a boo moment when the one guy kind of drops down from the bottom of the train and goes boo, jumpy. Uh, but there was also a lot of tension build up. We really didn't get to see that much action until a good way into the film. Alice wasn't that overly, superpower woman. She had some kung fu moves. Obviously, the famous scene where she kicks the dog right through the window. But it wasn't that extraordinary, especially compared to she wasn't killing people psychically with her mind. So it was fairly good. A lot of people give it credit. I do like the direction they were taking with this whole kind of underground. It was filmed in Germany, and they used actual underground metro stations and bunkers, and even the mansion was. If you listen to the DVD commentary and stuff, they used an old SS barracks as the mansion, and for tone setting, that is freaking awesome. Uh, to use some of the apparently actually, and even after the when it was communist, it was filmed in what would have been East Germany, and so the DDR's intelligence service, that's the East German intelligence service, it had apparently used it to interrogate place. So the mansion, it has this fascinating little backstory, which I love for mood setting. It seems like the perfect setting for this kind of spook fest. And to its credit, it had some original stuff in this. That laser scene, despite it not being in the games, is actually is a very original scene. That's kind of trapped with the lasers trying to kill you, and kind of very creative. It shows some confidence by at least the one commando. Literally, his name's One. Kind of outsmarting it at first, but then he gets the net, which they kind of reference later on in Aliens vs. Predator, since he gets killed the same way in that movie, basically. And the games later adopted that element. I also loved the dress reference. If you look at the dress that Alice wears, it's very close to how Ada Wong is in Resident Evil games, at least the first one. Just take that little I don't know whatever that little flabby thing that hangs off on her right side is, and just cut that off, and it looks very much like the dress that Ada would wear. So there was a lot in the Commandos look a lot like Hunk and stuff. Visually, it fills in a lot better with the rest of the games. The corporation was very much like the games. In the games, at least until Code Veronica, the Umbrella Corporation wasn't that in your face in it as a villain. Yes, they were the evil protagonists, but they were much more in the background, which is how they were in the games. It wasn't automatically that the corporation was super evil. You just got the sense they were doing research, and this one rogue guy decided to go down there and steal the T-Virus to sell it, which is kind of how the games start off a little bit, But overall, it's certainly considered the best. I think I agree. I do like this as the best of the entire series, on a pure technical standpoint. I do for some reason like to watch Apocalypse just for watching people get shot, but I'll get into that for the next video, which will be the Resident Evil Apocalypse review, which was a little bit different.